Hello, hello. Welcome back to Happiness by Habit, the podcast where we get real about life, joy, and making sure you don't disappear in the process of raising tiny humans. Today's guest is someone who gets it. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a podcast host, and a fierce advocate for not losing yourself while navigating relationships and parenthood. Yes, we are talking about you, moms and dads, because raising a family doesn't mean pressing pause on your own happiness. Reesa Morala is the host of the Real Family Eats podcast and a specialist in helping parents find balance between personal identity, relationship satisfaction, and not losing their minds. Sounds like something you might need? Well, me too. So grab your coffee, hide from your kids for a second, no judgment, and let's dive into this interesting conversation. Welcome, dear Risa.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. Let's start with $1 million question. Why do so many parents feel guilty for prioritizing their own happiness?
Well, honestly, that's a great question because I don't think I've ever met a single parent who doesn't struggle with that parent guilt. And I think it is such an innate thing because there is this drive and passion that we have to be able to raise kind of good, successful, and thriving children that sometimes it's hard to kind of zoom out and think of it as that we can have both. And that we're just like, I want this person to be successful. And so if that means I need to pause my relationship, pause me time, then that's what I'm going to do because this person is so important to me.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. What does a healthy balance between parenthood and personal identity look like? And how do we start creating it?
Yeah, I honestly, one of the first things that I will tell folks is that if you're looking at something that you want to do, but that voice inside you, right, that critical voice that says, oh, that's going to be too selfish, you can't take time away, is immediately reframing. If your child, that person that you love so much, that heart outside of your body, were to come to you and ask, hey, is it okay for me to take 5 minutes to really enjoy my coffee? Chances are the answer that you would tell your own child is yes, then you too also deserve that yes. And that it's okay. And we can start out small with something like I mentioned, if you talked about in the beginning, grab your coffee, that it's okay. I don't think I have ever met a child who, because we took a sip of coffee and just gave ourselves 10 more seconds to smell the aroma or feel it as it warms our soul and our heart, that they were crying for 10 more seconds. That's okay. They will survive. I have not ever treated a child, for struggles because their parent took that extra 10 seconds, 10 minutes, an hour to be able to really pour into themselves.
Sometimes that's all we need. Just an extra couple of minutes to recharge and to relax or to do something basic.
Yes.
Interesting. So let's diving into that. The podcast name is Happiness by Habit. So I would love to talk about some happy habits from the parenthood perspective. What are some habits that you would recommend to a parent that they can implement into their daily life so they can have sanity and just time for themselves?
Yes. I think one basic one that it seems basic when you say it, but it's so hard to do is giving ourselves grace. We are going to mess up. We are going to mess up, if not every day. I'm a therapist. This is what I live and breathe and do, and I mess up on a daily basis. And so I find that especially as parents, we're really good at critiquing ourselves and seeing all the flaws in what we've done. And just offering yourself a little bit of that compassion and a little bit of that grace in the same way that we offer it to our children, begin offering it to yourself. So when that voice starts to come out, and especially that word should, we use that word a lot. And so the minute you feel yourself going into the shoulds, of really reframing and allowing yourself permission to go, I'm doing the best that I can with what I have right now. And
Yeah,
that's okay.
absolutely. That's okay. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be the best you can do with what you have.
Yes.
I can definitely relate to that, especially for new parents, right? The beginning is probably the most difficult part when you don't have the experience, but you want to do your best. So
Mhm.
it's very appreciated that time to be kind to your own self. It's very important.
Yes. And I think, like you said, our children, we don't get our children with manuals. Nobody is telling us
Mhm.
exactly how to operate this child, right? And what works. And even if you figure out what works for one child, if you have more than one child, the likelihood that they're going to need a different way of interacting is really high. And so, just again, if you're going into something, let's say work, I don't think anybody would expect you to go into a brand new job with no manual and immediately get it to perfection every single time, every single day. So, why do we expect parents to do the same thing? It's a job and we don't get a manual.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about relationships. How does nurturing your own happiness actually make partnerships stronger?
When we take that little bit of time to really nurture our own happiness, it unlocks, in my experience, more capacity to actually give back to your partner and be able to hear their needs, to meet their needs, to even be able to kind of see the need and not feel like I immediately have to get defensive because I'm just trying to find my own way. And that, hey, if I meet your need, it means that I can't meet mine. And oh, that feels just so awful. And so when we actually start to pour into our cup, it releases that stress, that pressure. And then we find that joy of, I actually want to be in this relationship. And immediately we are able to actually find the capacity and find the drive to want to pour into our partner as well. And then vice versa, you find that as they're filling their own cup and finding their own happiness, they have more capacity to meet our needs. And then all of a sudden, we're joining more together, we're feeling more connected, and we're feeling like a team again to go into this parenthood thing that is really hard. And so when you got that person in your corner that you know has your back, there's so much more confidence that happens
Mm.
when we start now having to deal with these sometimes little monsters, right?
Yes, for sure. And this would also apply to the kids, right? To the children, because as long as we take ownership of what will it take for us to be happy, once we are happy, we have that cup full, then we can be more mindful and be more caring for others. But if we are not happy, then it's going to be a much more difficult situation. And I also like to mention that it's important to take accountability for our own happiness because we are the only one responsible for that. We cannot put that heaviness, that responsibility on others. It's our own responsibility. So we need to take responsibility and we know what it takes to be happy because happiness is different for every single human being, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that because I think so many times we get stuck in that, like, you are making me unhappy. You are the one
Mm.
that's causing this within me, and I can't be happy unless you make me happy. And gosh, that robs us of so much power over our own being and our own wellness. And
Mm.
then we're putting that faith and that dependence on another human being who is just as fickle as we are. Right. And so if we're kind of putting our faith in that other person, the likelihood that we're going to feel disappointed just rapidly increases. And so, as you mentioned, when we're taking some of that ownership, absolutely, it allows us to be able to have our needs met. And the way I like to frame it with my folks is that finding the cake, we are the cake, and we need to make sure that our whole cake self being is all in one piece and doing that. And then a relationship is just that icing on top. It's a little extra, it's nice, so it's that little extra luxury, but we're still a full cake whether we have that other person or not.
Absolutely. And you can only give once you have. You only give what you have. If you don't have anything to give, then it's going to be much more difficult.
Mhm.
Let's talk about advice for parents. What is the one thing you would suggest to parents to switch from surviving to thriving as parents?
Yeah. And that's such an important question because I think so many of us feel like we're just surviving. And so some of that, as you mentioned, is really just first starting and increasing our own awareness that maybe there are areas, it doesn't make us failures, it doesn't define our character, but that there
Mm-hmm.
are areas that maybe we could give ourselves a little bit more grace, a little bit more compassion, and then giving ourselves that permission to, as we said, starting out small, taking that extra 5 seconds instead of just scarfing down your food as fast as you can because I don't have time to even feed myself, is that, again, that extra 5 seconds of let me actually enjoy this food that I'm about to put in my body. Let it just like nourish your body, nourish your soul. Take that deep breath and then enter in. And now when we go into that space, we're not reacting. We have a little bit more capacity to actually be with our children, to have a little bit more of that patience. And then
Mm-hmm.
we're able to actually get to more of that feeling like, okay, I've got this. I've got my groove instead of feeling like I'm drowning all the time.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Also set some boundaries, right? Like, learn. I mean, I know we will do anything for our kids, but sometimes it's okay to say no with like, Mom, can I do this? Ra, 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 ra." If that involves like doing a sacrifice, extra sacrifice that you don't really want or would appreciate it, it's better to say no instead of being resented or being upset all day for something that you're doing because you say yes. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good also point to keep in mind.
100%. I know many folks, we want, again, our kid to thrive and be successful. So sometimes we sign them up for 5 different sports. Well,
Mm.
maybe let's just cut it back down to maybe 3. They're still in sports. They're still getting that engagement, but we're not stretching ourselves to try to get them, little Billy to 5 different things. It's okay to say no. I promise they will be okay.
Yes, 100%. Another trick I find that is useful is maybe in order to have that your own time, perhaps either wake up earlier than them or stay later. So you can have that me time that is so much needed for most of us. Because a lot of times, especially the moms, I don't know if you probably can relate to this for sure, is that the kids don't leave us alone, especially when they are little, like not even to go to the bathroom, to go to simple things. You need to go like quickly. I remember I took shower, like a minute shower, even washing my hair when my kids were toddlers. So it was like, woof, really quick. So I find that it's a good strategy to in order to get your own free time to either wake up or stay a little later than them.
Yeah, I think it absolutely does require a little bit of creativity. I think, again, going back to this idea that has almost been ingrained and passed down, that we kind of need to make sure that our children are constantly entertained and that we're constantly there, and that it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to, even during the day, like maybe you don't have the strength to get up early or to stay late because you're so exhausted,
Yes.
and if they're tiny, getting out one of those playpens, and just sit them there. It's okay to have them learn how to entertain themselves for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that actually builds a lot of value, that we don't have to be attending to them every minute of every day, that it's okay for you to say, hey, for 10 minutes, I believe you are capable of entertaining
Mm-hmm.
yourself, in a confined space, and that'll be okay. In fact, one of the things that I did have to learn how to say to my own children is that it's not my job to entertain you. I have given you options. You get to choose. And so if you want to choose a bored state of mind, that's totally within your rights. It's also totally
Mm-hmm.
within my right to not entertain you every single minute of every single day.
Oh my God, I love that. I had that conversation also with my kids, my son, a lot of times. Mom, I'm bored. Mom, I'm bored. At the beginning, I was like, okay, do this, do that, da,
Mhm.
da, 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 but then I was like, no, it's okay. You're bored. It's okay to be bored.
Yeah.
Ignites your creativity. These are some options of things you can do, but you can choose other things. You have like 1,000 toys, or you can do many activities. So it's, if you decide to be bored, this is again your decision, and it's okay.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely love that. Okay, let's talk about another piece of advice, especially for young moms. My kids are older already. Well, not that old. They are 8 and 10. How old are yours?
Mine are 11 and 8.
Okay, so we're almost about the same age. But I remember at the beginning, one of the advices I got when they were babies, we were just starting, it was like, just be mindful of who you listen to, because at some point, everybody's going to have something to say about how you raise your kids. And that can
Mhm.
be overwhelming, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you need to be mindful of who you let in your head about, because there are going to be some advices that do not work for you at all, but some, obviously, they're going to be really good.
Mhm.
What would you advise the young mothers to act about that pieces of advice that everybody has?
I think it definitely takes figuring out almost like a thick skin of being able to kind of say, okay, I hear you, and let it go in one ear and out the other if it doesn't resonate. And it's okay if it doesn't resonate. So, really taking that information, and if it's not landing for you, it's okay to leave it. And we don't have to do it in a disrespectful way to that other person. We can say, okay, thank you. I hear your words. Thanks so much, and move along. And then you can just disregard it, because you're absolutely right. So many people have thoughts on the best way to raise children. Even if they have raised 10 children of their own, their experience does not mean it's going to look, sound, or feel like your experience. And so what worked for them may not work for you. And so you get to decide, and it's okay for you to decide this does not fit for me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because like every situation, every family is different. Also, every kid is a whole different world. I have two
Yeah.
kids, and each one is 100% different than the other one. Yes, so a lot of the advices do not apply to all. I mean, for sure.
Mhm.
What is the best parenting advice? Speaking of advice, what was the best parenting advice you got, Risa?
So probably the best advice that I have heard was, not everybody is meant to be a parent, and that's okay.
For sure.
Yes. And I think for me, it really released some of that pressure of like, I have to do this because this is what I'm supposed to do. This is the next step I'm supposed to take. And really entering into it with kind of my own freedom. Is this what I want for me? Not for anybody else, not because I'm living up to somebody else's expectation, but really, does this align with my values and what I want for my future? And if the answer is no, that's okay too. Like, in fact, it takes so much courage. I think, especially in our day, in our society, when so many people are saying, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get married and
Yeah.
have kids. Like, for you to say,
Yeah.
kids aren't for me, like, oh man, the courage
It's
it
okay.
takes to say that.
100%. Oh, yes. I love that because it's so true. Well, depending on the person, I mean, I have friends and family members that do not have kids, and they are the happiest ever, and that's okay.
Yes,
And the best uncles or aunties for others, right? And then, like,
absolutely.
for me, it was kind of a big deal. I really, from when I was a kid, I knew I wanted to be a mother, but it's different for everyone. Yes, that's a good piece of advice for sure. Let's talk about what was the worst advice that you received or you heard, like one of those terrible advices that people say.
Man, only one? I feel like it's so much.
It's just the one that
Yes, I think probably the one that landed the deepest hurt and the deepest cut was when I was expressing a difficulty and pain, and another parent looked at me and said, Reesa, it's not that hard. And oh my gosh, the immediate hurt and just like
yeah,
pain and shame and guilt that
Mm,
my mind immediately kind of wanted to go into was pretty intense. And so I think that was probably one of the hardest ones.
for sure. Yes. And a lot of people judge others. And
Mhm.
I like to remind everybody or myself especially, like each person or each family has their own rules and whatever works for them that does not work for the others. I mean, so I try to kind of keep it like, okay, maybe that person is telling it that advice from the best with the best intention. I thank her, but thanks, but no thanks. Thank you
Yes.
for sharing, but next let's move on. And
Mhm.
yes, yes, that's I hear you. That happened to a lot of people, I guess, especially the younger at the beginning, no?
Yes.
Let's talk about God self-care ritual. Do you have any self-care ritual you would like to tell us about?
I have two that I really love.
Really love. Okay.
One of them being when I come home from work, because I sometimes sit and I listen to some of people's hardest, deepest
Mm.
pain. So it can be a lot. And
Yes.
so one of the ways that I have found to be able to kind of leave work at work and be home when I'm home
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
I have my girl power ballads that I will blast in the car. Sometimes I'm
Mm.
singing along to them at the top of my lungs, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'm just listening. And that for me just helps get out whatever is in there so that by the
Mm.
time I get home, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I can do this.
That's
And
good.
the second one, similarly along the lines, is that when
Uh-huh.
at home we're having big emotions, it's really tough. Somebody is struggling with emotion regulation. My family and I, we like to turn on just a nice upbeat song and we will
Mm-hmm.
just dance for the entire song. Whatever moves come to mind, we just start moving our body and it usually turns into some like silly movements and then by the end of it we're laughing and we're joining and sometimes we let the music keep playing and we just kind of keep jamming out. So music
I
plays a
love
big
that
role in
one.
mine.
That's a beautiful one. Yes, I like it
Yeah.
because you disconnect from the problem and then you just relax and let your body, move. And that's very therapeutic, right? That's
Yes.
really good. Very nice. I really enjoyed this conversation, Risa. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure our listeners would love to follow you and learn more about what your services are. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
I would love to. So, best way to find me is at my website, embracerenewaltherapy.com. That's also where you can find most of me on social media, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Embrace Renewal Therapy. And there you can see my services. I do provide more intensive counseling and therapy services for couples in the state of California. And then I also do have couples and parenting workshops, and those are virtual, accessible to anybody that has an internet connection across the world. And those are
Nice.
all listed on my website.
Wonderful. I will definitely check those out and I will put them here on the podcast so people can follow you and connect with you. Thank you very much for dropping these truth bombs and reminding us that being a happy whole person is the best gift we can give to our families. And to all the parents out there, consider this your permission slip to prioritize yourself. No guilt, no shame, just you reclaiming you. And if you love this conversation, subscribe, share, and send it to a parent who needs this reminder today. Thank you so much and stay positive, be happy. Bye bye.